Hi guys, we're going to be working on the mid-chapter checkpoint today. So I am on page 331. Number 1, explain how you would model 5 times 2/3. So if you remember, how we would do that is I would draw 5, something. Rectangles, let's go with rectangles. I would draw 5 rectangles divided into 3 parts each. I would then shade in 2 of each of those 3 parts. Okay, so what it ends up looking like is this. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I split them into 3. And then I go back through and I shade 2/3 of each of them in. So that is how I would show it as a model. Number 2, when you multiply 2/3 by a factor, by a fraction less than 1, how does the product compare to the factors? So 2/3 is already a fraction, and then anything less than 1 is also a fraction. So we're talking about a fraction times a fraction. Do you remember what happens when we multiply by parts of something? We end up with even smaller parts. So the answer is going to be, the answer will be a smaller number than either of the factors. The answer will end up being a smaller number than either of the factors. Number 3. We are actually going to be just straight up solving them. So 2/3 times 6. Remember, the 6 has an invisible 1 underneath it. So it's 2 times 6 over 3 times 1, which is 2 times 6 is 12, over 3 times 1, which is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Just a second. Okay, so let's go on to number 4. Number 4 says 4/5 times 7. So we have the imaginary 1 underneath the 7. We go straight across 4 times 7 over 5 times 1. That gives us 4 times 7, which is 28, over 5 times 1, which is 5. Then I have 28 divided by 5. Okay, so 5 goes into 28. How many times? 5 times what is about 28? Well, 5 times 5 gives us 25. And then I can do the 8 minus the 5, which gives me a 3. And so I am left with 5 3/5. 5 3/5. Okay? Pause it if you need to. I'm moving on to the next page. Number 5. 8 times 5/7. Once again, I have my invisible 1 underneath the 8. And I have 8 times 5. I'm rewriting it over 1 times 7. 8 times 5 is equal to 40, over 1 times 7, which is equal to 7. And then I need to do 7 goes into 40 how many times? Sorry, I scooted it a little too far over. 7 into 40. Well, let's see. 7 times what is about 40? 7 times 5 is 35, so I can do that. And then I can go and I can borrow, because I cannot do 0 minus 5. 10 minus 5 is 5. So I end up with 7 and 5/7 as my answer. And I guess we will circle that because that got a little bit lost. Number 6. 7/8 times 3/8 is equal to, so I'm going to go 7 times 3 over 8 times 8, which is 7 times 3 is 21, over 8 times 8, which is 64. And those look like really big numbers, but I cannot take out anything from them. Just a second, my screen paused. I need to fix that. Okay, I'm back. Number 7. 1/2 times 3/4. So I have the 1 times 3 on the top and the 2 times 4 on the bottom. 1 times 3 is 3 over 2 times 4, which is 8. So I'm left with 3/8. I am going to skip 8, 9, 10, and 11. You can do those by yourself. It's exactly the same thing. You can put in your invisible ones underneath if it doesn't have, if it's not a fraction, if it's a whole number. We multiply straight across, and then we can divide if we need to, or we can just leave it the way that it is if we need to, okay? If we don't need to. So I am going to jump down to number 12, actually. You're doing fine. Number 12 says 3 times 2/3 will be blank 3. So right here, we're looking for equal than, greater than, or less than. Well, I have the whole number. I'm only taking parts of the whole number. I'm not taking all of the whole number, I'm just taking parts of it, which means it is always going to be less than. It'll be less than the whole number. Number 13. 5/7 times 3 will be blank than 5/7. Okay, so here I'm talking about my little fraction. I am taking 3 of those fractions, which means since I have 3 of those fractions, it's going to be more than 1 of those fractions. Okay, so if I have 5 here, 5 here, 5 here, even though they're only parts, there's still going to be, now I have 15 parts. I had 5 parts, but now I have 15 parts. Does that make sense? Okay, so we are going to write down, they don't want more, they want greater than. Greater than. So 5/7 times 3 will be greater than 5/7. Back page. Number 14. There is 5/6 of an apple pie left from dinner. Tomorrow, Victor plans to eat 1/6 of what is left. How much of the whole pie will he eat tomorrow? So he wants to eat 1/6 of the pie that is left. So we are going to be multiplying. And we end up with 5 times 1 over 6 times 6, which gives us 5 over 36. So he's eating 5/36 of the pie. You would think he would just take like 1/6, just cut again and take another 6, and he is making this way too complicated. He does not need to eat 5/36 of the pie. He can just, you know, finish the cutting into 6 and then just take a 6. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Number 15. Everett and Marie are going to make fruit bars for their family reunion. They want to make 4 times the amount the recipe makes. If the recipe calls 4 times the amount, if the recipe calls for 2/3 of a cup of oil, how much oil are they going to need? So we are at 4 times 2/3. Let me move this up. We have an invisible 1 underneath the 4, and we're going to go straight across. 4 times 2 over 1 times 3. 4 times 2 is 8 over 1 times 3, which is 3. And then I'm going to go 3 into 8. What times 3 is almost 8? 3 times 2 is 6. 8 minus 6 gives us 2. So I'm going to put that up there. 2 2/3. So that is our actual answer. And then finally, number 16. Pause this if you need to. I'm going to go get another piece of paper. Okay, so I'm going to use this color. For number 16, Matt made a model below. To help solve the math problem, write the expression which matches Matt's model. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to first work on what did he cut the columns into? So how many columns does he have? He has 4 columns. How many of those columns did he shade in? He shaded in 3 of the columns. Yellow, do you see that? He shaded 3 of the columns yellow. We then have times, how many rows does he have? He has 3 rows. How many of those rows did he shade in green? He shaded 1 in green. So the problem it's showing is 3/4 times 1/3. And then we can actually solve that. So the 3 times the 1 goes on the top. The 4 times 3 goes on the bottom. 3 times 1 is 3. 4 times 3 is 12. And really, guys? Sorry, talking to my computer. Are we done now? Okay, so now we can divide out the 3. Because a 3 will come out of both a 3 and a 12. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. So the answer for our problem is 1/4. Have a good day, guys. I'll see you later.